Today we're making an epic real-life battle map, just like a medieval cartographer. So stay tuned. Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to Skill Tree, where we learn how to do just about everything. So next week, which happened way too fast, but next week we're heading to Conquest of Mythidia in Germany, which is the largest LARP in the world. We talked about this adventure before in this video here if you want to learn more about it. But during said event, there's battles where there's like 10,000 people in a field fighting against each other. It's amazing. There's actual troop movements, whole armies coming together. It's something to behold, let me tell you what. Anyways, I thought it would be really cool if our encampment had a map of the battlefield so we can plan out those troop movements and stuff just like an actual general back in the day. It sounds like a friggin' blast to me, so I wanted to make that map. Here's the thing though, anything worth doing is worth overdoing, so I didn't just want to make it, I wanted to make it as accurate as possible, like to scale map of the battlefield. Basically, I'm shooting to make one of these oldie maps where it's like, here there be monsters. And I want to try to do it like I'm an old-timey map maker, like ink and pen and figuring out the measurements on paper. So yeah, that is this episode. This episode, we're going way too deep into making a real-life battle map. So cool. While researching this, I realized that there's actually two different jobs here. There would be the actual surveyors, right? That would go out and they'd measure everything. Now I learned there's a bunch of different kind of tools they could use to triangulate to figure out the terrain and how far away things are. But in its simplest form, you could just take two sticks with a chain that's a known distance, let's say 10 meters or whatever. And then from that point, you're just kind of using that stick to measure your boundary line, how far apart things are. And as long as you have those measurements, you can figure this out pretty closely. Since that field is in Germany, my surveying crew is ye olde Google Maps. All I did was draw around the boundary of where the actual battle takes place, and then used its measurement tool to pull out 328 feet, which is roughly 100 meters. In retrospect, I should have just changed it 2 meters. It would have been easier than figuring out that 328 feet was 100, but we're fine here. Anywho, once we had that, I just brought it over to Photoshop, where I could make a box exactly 5 inches long and line it up with that measurement. Now I know that that measurement line is exactly 5 inches on paper. Then it was a simple matter of laying a grid over the thing, so the grid boxes were exactly 1 inch by 1 inch. With that all lined up, I now know that every one of my boxes in that grid is about 20 meters, because it takes 5 of them to make 100, 20. Now, from here with these measurements, we're gonna be able to do everything and keep it fairly accurate enough for what we need. Now, to make my map, I'm actually just using this brown drop paper here. You can get it from Lowe's or whatever. It's mostly used if you're painting or something to put on the floor. But it's nice and thick and has that kind of old paper feel to me. After cutting it a little bit larger than I needed, I marked out the center of it vertically and horizontally. Knowing exactly where that center is, I can build out from there evenly and know that everything is going to be perfect and fit within my space. Now, because I measured everything kind of small, like 1 inch equals whatever, the map would actually only end up being about this big. But in my head, I'm envisioning this like, in movies when there's a war room or something and they have the situation map on the table. I want that where you can put all the little pieces that represent your troops and you can move them around. This is an actual tool for planning actual battles, so I want it to work. So for that, I actually scaled it up. So every one of those boxes is now 2 inches. And luckily, my square here just so happened to be 2 inches wide. So all I had to do was line it up with my center line and then mark off every 2 inches. Once those lines were good, I then marked 2 inches going in the other direction to give me my 2x2 squares across everything. Now, if you've played tabletop games like D&D or whatever, this is very much turning out like a battle map, right? But that's the thing, those battle maps, like D&D itself, was taken from a war game. They used to set up these big fields and have all these little epic battles with their pieces and stuff. Now we have all these squares that we can look at our initial map and figure out where each little piece of that land fits in those squares. But in order to find them more easily, I actually put the alphabet going down one side of it and numbers going across the bottom. This way I know D3 is this specific box right here. So I put my first little mark right there in the corner because that's where the corner of the battlefield right there actually is on my real map. Now I just go box by box, marking wherever like that property line crosses those box lines. Or if something zigs or zags in the middle of that box, it's easier to kind of look at the box and measure that out and get it perfect. I just add little dots wherever a change in direction would happen, and then use my ruler to actually connect those dots. And since I know the exact measurements of those squares, I can actually set up my little compass here and get them almost perfect. Using this little connect the dot method, I have the perfect layout that matches the battlefield that's on the map, which is just great. It's like, even measurement-wise, it all worked out perfectly. Okay, but here's where the actual work comes in, because I'm not just kind of sketching this thing out. I'm gonna ink it. I'm gonna do it like it would have been done back in the day. So to do this, I'm actually using this India ink here in sepia tones because it's old-timey. At least it feels it to me. And a quill pen with a nib and everything. Full disclosure, although I do consider myself an artist, I like to draw and stuff, my medium is very much charcoal, where I can smudge things, and if I make a mistake, I can erase it. I am very new at anything as permanent as pen and ink, much less something that I dip like a dip pen. Not going in with high confidence on this one, guys. But yeah, those are the tools of the trade right now I'm trying for this map making. Though I do have to be really careful about how loudly I say the word map, because Maddie is obsessed.
Wait. Are we talking about maps?
Damn it!
I have a lot of maps. For those of you who haven't caught my endless ramblings on Discord or our live streams or just talked to me at all, my main hobby is world building. I do it for fun, for books that I write, for D&D games that I run, for just any lore that catches my interest and isn't complete. So I was very excited when World Anvil reached out to sponsor one of our videos. Excited enough that I have been reminded that I have a time limit multiple times. So let me just I've had to cobble together all of the different ways to organize and sort and visualize all of my world building. But even just looking around their site and with the examples they sent us, I can see so many ways World Anvil would have made my life that much easier and prettier and less likely to lose as random files on my computer. Honestly, timelines, interactive maps so you can click into more detailed maps, whole wiki structures, rollable tables, character sheets. It's basically everything that I looked for while creating all of my worlds in D&D games. Remember when I got obsessed with Star Wars, did a 6-hour live stream about the world building, laid out the entirety of the Mandalorian language, history, and the light year coordinates of all the planets in the galaxy? It is very tempting to go back now and use World Anvil to lay out the galaxy with all the planets, create a timeline with all of that history. I may have already started, but just to try out the site. It probably won't become another 6-hour stream, maybe. In the meantime, World Anvil has given us the code SKILLTREE to give to you, lovely folks. It gives you 51% off any yearly subscription to the site. We have the link in the description if you want to go check it out. Otherwise, you can head over to worldanvil.com. If you do end up making any worlds, or just want to rant about world building, be sure to send them over to us on Discord. I'd love to see what you guys are cooking up. Or forging on the World Anvil. Anyway, back to maps.
I did warn you. Okay, back to map making. Okay, so we have the property all laid out. Now, I'm not going to just draw lines around the borders. I would rather it look like you're looking over the top of this actual battlefield. So I want the whole border to be trees, just like it is in the satellite pic. So I started laying those in with the pen, just kind of drawing them all along my little border here, which already started to look really cool. By the way, I learned a really fun way to make those trees. Here, let me show you over at the blackboard. Okay, so specifically the ones we're going to be drawing here are like oak trees or something, right? Not pine trees. I say this specifically because if you look, Maddie, if you want to put a picture up here, you look at one of those trees, you have like your main trunk, but then off of that are large other kind of stems that are coming off, right? What's going to happen is that every one of those large pieces that come off makes its own cluster. Think of looking at like a piece of broccoli, right? It has all those little nodes on it. So in order to make that effect, we first start with our little circle of a tree, no really hard shapes, we're not doing topiary. And we're just gonna kind of jag it around, maybe add some interest to it. Random shape. Now we can isolate though, like this right here looks like it could be a node. I'll put a little mark right here. So now this is one. We'll say this right here can be one. So we'll go boop, which means this will be another one. So this one has 3 pieces coming off of it. So now that we visualize that, we don't want to draw like a line going across them because that's not how nature works. we're just going to suggest it by the direction that all of our like leaves or the spaces between the leaves go. So we're just gonna go like here, 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 and a little here. Everything here is going around this central point. So we're just kind of like little jags, little jags, little jags. Just kind of working towards the middle, spiraling in there. Then we'll do the same thing with this one here. So a little here, we'll say it comes all the way out to here. And then going around, working our way towards the center. So there's our next node. And then with the last one here, do exactly the same thing. Now where they meet here, there's going to be the overlap. So we can just add even a little bit more spaces here to really kind of darken up where this happens. And there you have it, top of tree. Super simple, just keep it really random. Make sure your lines aren't like perfect little, because that doesn't happen in nature. And then you can space them out as much as you want, or you can do like I did in this past one here and just kind of like have them right up against each other. So one tree butts right up against another tree here. And now like we'll make this one its own little node, and then this a little tiny one, and this a big one, maybe even this one, just a real small one next to it. There you have it. And you just kind of rinse and repeat varying sizes and how it's laid out. As fun as that is, there's just so many trees. I did learn something cool though, that if I use the ink pen and draw the first tree and then slowly work my way towards the back of the map, the pen would start to run out of ink, which would naturally make my trees fade as they hit the edges of the map. Which I didn't mean to do at first, but I love the effect so much that I just rolled with it for the whole rest of the project. And though this looked good, by about the halfway point, and like 1,000 trees deep, I A, needed a break from the monotony of tree, and B, decided that this was gonna look a little bit too boring, I guess. As fun as the trees are, there's just trees after a while, you know? And again, I want it to look like the ye olde here there be monster type maps. So, to kill two birds with one stone, I figured I could fill up those margins a little bit with other things, and then continue with my tree madness. So in the spirit of those old maps, I decided to put one of our main enemies in the bottom corner here. So one of the factions we fight against are called the Undead Flesh. Basically, they're cursed with or gifted with, depending on which one of them you ask, eternal life, but the eternal life comes with the cost of your skin, like your body rots, you're dead, but you're still alive. So they have to replace body parts all the time, it's a whole thing. So yeah, I first sketched out an undead flesh in my more comfortable medium and pencil down here at the bottom, and then went back over it, inking it with my pen. To actually add any like shading and depth to it, I'm gonna be using a technique called cross-hatching. Basically, the way this works is you start by drawing lines in one direction around the contours of your shape. So you can see my lines kind of go around the hood in the direction the hood is going, around his chest armor, it makes a rounded kind of shape, down his little belt. And kind of at this stage, they can be fairly evenly spaced, but if you want something to look darker, you put those lines closer together. So that already gives you a little bit of shape and depth, right? But now here's where the cross-hatching comes into play. To make areas even darker still, you add a line going the opposite direction, crossing your first lines. Again, how close you put these lines together is going to change how dark of a value that looks. So you can see here, anywhere there's shadow, I kind of put more hatches and then space them out where I want it to be a little bit lighter. So with that, we formed a cross or an X, right? To make it even darker still, we now cut down like across that X. These are going to be for my darkest values here. So anywhere I want it to be really, really dark is where I add that third slash going in that direction. You can keep adding slashes, cutting those directions as many as you want to get as dark of a value as you need. For me though, this is more than enough. I'm very happy with this, especially because it is a very new technique for me and I'm worried about it getting too messy too quick. Kind of like it did on the face. I feel like the face, I should have quit a little bit or left it a little bit more open. It feels a little messy to me. Kind of drives me crazy. But it's a new technique. Now next to this dude, again in the fashion of the Here There Be Monsters, I wanted to put this kind of banner that I sketched out here. To lay my text perfectly though, I measured out the space inside of that banner and then made 22 even marks within that space. I divided it by 22, by the way, because I took the phrase that I wanted in the font that I wanted and just counted out the letters, including the spaces. That's gonna let me know exactly how much space I have to work with to fit this whole thing in. Though once I got started, I realized I wanted to add a little bit more style, especially to the capital letters. So I actually end up going with a different phrasing here. Specifically, lands of the Ankori, because they were the Angkor people who got transformed into the undead flesh, so I thought it sounded cool. This all I simply traced out with my pen, and then went back in and filled in all that lettering. To be clear, I really wanted to cross-hatch that lettering and keep it with the style, but I'm not good with the dip pens, and it kept just like bleeding whole spots inside of it, so I just decided to go with it. It's fine. I did, however, cross-hatch the entirety of the banner, which I think turned out good, but again, it's just a little messy. I'm just not good at the technique yet. Still, I think it was good enough. I'm not upset about it. Then up in the top corner, I made this scroll here with our kingdom's insignia on it, and a little blurb about the story that the battle would become. Basically, our little camp collects stories, so it's writing about the battle that they're planning right now as if it's already happened and how there were heroes and legends and all that stuff. Finally, no map is a map without a compass rose at the bottom. I feel like it really finishes off that look. To do this, I used a compass. This gives me a nice perfect circle right where I need it. I also made sure I put the circle exactly over like a cross in the square pattern that I have there, because then I know all the little legs are exactly equal. Though it leaves me with a problem, because I do want this to be as accurate as possible, and to make it like fit nicely on the paper, I actually took the shape of the field, how it would be like north is this way, I moved it like this to square it up, which means north is technically this way. I can't have that. I can't have that wrong on the map. So to figure this out, I first used a straight edge, connecting it to 2 points that I knew were exactly across from each other on the north-south line there on the map, giving me that exact north-south line. Then I used my protractor and lined it up exactly with my grid lines. By sliding this underneath the ruler, I now see exactly what angle off of 90 my true north-south line is. In this case, instead of it being a 90-degree angle with those boxes, it is an 80-degree angle. And because I had set up that compass right at the crossroads of one of those boxes, I just set up my protractor right there again, lined up a straight edge with that 80-degree in mind, and this gives me my north bearing. And since all of those cardinal directions would move at the same time at the exact same amount, I just used this wing divider and set it exactly how far away from the line that first point was, and then went around marking off that distance from each one of those lines. This gives me my exact line, so they're perfectly the same. Which, using the ink with the feather and using an actual compass and then a wing divider to figure out my measurements and a protractor, man, I feel in the zone here. It feels very much like how it would have been done at some point. Very cool. It's a very like touching history. I like that a lot. Since I knew those points, I just kind of used the straight edge of my ruler to make all of the points of the compass. Though it looks fancy, it's literally just triangles of the same like dimensions. That's all it is. So now that I have all those spaces filled, I went back in to crazily finish the rest of my trees, and also added this one last feature, which is a ditch that runs through the center of the field. I wanted to make sure I put that feature in because it actually becomes strategically important during the battles. I have fought in 2 of said battles, and every time I fell victim to that damn ditch. One year it was raining, so it basically became a moat. So you're stuck on one side or the other, you're stranded without help or something. Or it becomes such a slow down point for people to have to go through that it becomes a feature you can use to your advantage. So if we're lined up along the side of this, we know this side is going to be harder for the enemy to attack at, right? Or you can kind of pincer them into it and push them back into that little divot, slowing down their retreat. Which is another cool thing about this project, because I can see the strategic advantage of understanding all of these and planning specifically to the field. Obviously that makes sense when you say it out loud, but until you've actually done it in person, you don't realize exactly how perfect it is to be able to plan all that stuff out. It's neat. Even just the shape of the field, it's larger on what would be our side than it is on the other. If we can meet them more than halfway, we're compacting them in and we can come around the edges a little better. I love that. I think that's really cool. Or vice versa. I feel like it's human nature for everybody to kind of congregate towards the middle-ish of the field and move in as a block. But now you have these open sides that they can come around on. Not good. I can wax on about this. There's so much I learned just from making this map. It's awesome. Really cool. One last crazy thing I did was I made a bunch of blades of grass. These are just kind of little hash marks all over the place. I was at first gonna do just kind of a few to say there's grass here, so you'd get it, but I didn't like how separated they look. So I just went box by box in the field and made sure there was a comfortable amount of grass in each box. I think it's probably too much, but I had fun, whatever. But there you have it. Everything is inked in. Look at how cool this looks. I love my little undead flesh guy. The trees look good. I ended up adding in this distance marker so you can measure out the actual distances when you can't see the boxes anymore. The compass rose looks good. My little scroll looks great. Though I can't help but laugh. Like, to go back to the undead flesh guy, because of his scale and because of the way the trees look, it just looks like he's very proud of his cabbage garden. Like, he's so stoked about how well his crop came in this year, and I'm very proud of him. He's doing great. He has the wrong tool for the job, but he's learning. He's doing fantastic. But as epic and as cool and as, like, to scale this friggin' map is, I love this thing, I wanted to add a little bit more, namely color. It's very monotone, right? Though that's still cool, I think it would be cool just as is. I really wanted to add a little something, and I wanted it to look, again, like those older maps. And on a lot of those older maps, they used like a watercolor, like a wash, right? So that's what I wanted to go with. The thing is, I've never done that before either. And I didn't have any watercolors, but I did have these watercolor pencils. Basically, they're the same pigment you would use in watercolor. You just mix them with water and it becomes a watercolor paint. But instead, it's just a pigment that you draw with, like I'm doing with this green here. And then you use your brush to add water to activate it, smoothing it out and having that watercolor effect. And though terrified, I decided to start with my cabbage farmer. Just coloring the brown of his boots and gloves and stuff. And then once I went back over with the water, look at how different this is. When that pigment activates, it becomes so rich, really, really cool. And the neat thing is it's watercolor. You can layer them on top of each other. So you can just go back in with other, colors or whatever to add depth, to add a little bit of a different color to it. I did that with this red here, adding a little bit of brown to it afterwards to darken it up so it wasn't so vibrantly red. The end result, really, really good. As uncomfortable as I am using like pen and ink, I'm way more uncomfortable using color. Almost everything I do is in black and white. So the fact that I'm able to get these results with this means they are dead easy. You can for sure do this. With the scroll here, I decided to get a little more fancy, putting a light tan in the middle area, and then pre-coloring in some brown around the edges, thinking I'll get a vignette. I did learn though it's very important that you start with the lightest color, and then you work the darker color in. Just because the pigments are so strong, if I started on those edges with that brown and worked my way to the middle, it would all just end up being brown, some gradient of brown. If you want to have that kind of fun mix of color, like there's color on color, like a vignette would be, then you really gotta start by laying down that lighter color and then slowly dragging in the darker colors. With that in mind, I went to the banner and did that here as well, which came out awesome. I thought it was very messy with just the pen work, but with the color, it helped. I think it looks great. I'm genuinely very proud of that. That looks cool. So yeah, I won't bore you with every feature. I went around coloring everything, all the trees here, which I used the same method that I did with the pen, by the way. I started with like a lot of green in the trees that are actually touching the field, and then slightly less on the ones behind them, and nothing for the ones actually bordering. And then I used the color from the darkest trees and helped transplant it all the way down so that by the time I reached the edge, there was barely any pigment left on my brush, and it just added a little hint of green. Using this method, all my trees were done. My scroll work, the compass rose I did in a red and a silver, which came out awesome. That did leave me with a giant, massive expanse of field. I considered just leaving it brown, but again, it seemed very boring. So I wanted to add color to that, but I couldn't see me like coloring it in with the pencil and having it come out nice. And then going back over it with the brush, every time I add water to this paper, which isn't specifically watercolor paper, it wants to like buckle and move on me. I don't like that. But I learned a pretty cool technique. Again, the colored pencils are made up of just the pigment. So I learned that if I took some sandpaper and I just kind of sanded that pigment, it becomes a dust over my paper. A dust which I can then use a paper towel to smudge into the places that I want. Very much how I would use charcoal. This already gave me really good color coverage, but again, that color really activates when it's wet. So by using this spray bottle here, which has a very fine mist, and holding it pretty far away, I just kind of misted over it. That's not going to get everywhere wet. It's going to activate only certain areas where the water droplets touched. I can then use the brush to refine it, but for the most part, that leaves me with some like dark spots, some lighter green spots, and then a little bit of that brown showing through where I didn't touch everything, which looks like land. If you look at a field overhead or whatever, you've got darker patches, you've got some light greens, you got some dirt there. I think that's awesome. I think that came out great. As a final little use of these really useful Prismacolor like colored pencils, I just shaved some of this red into a tiny bowl here, mixed it with water, just making a watercolor paint. I then first covered up my little cabbage farmer warrior here and flicked the paint around him, giving it little blood splatters. Then I remove those and flick some on him that make him kind of part of that whole thing. Then I just removed the excess paper from the top and the bottom. And look at how dope this map is. Not only is it like, I'm artistically proud of it. Like, I think it came out very nice considering I'm not used to that medium, but it is to scale. 'Tis a battle map one could use to plan actual battles which will be taking place. I friggin' love that. I love a piece of art that is also useful. So cool. Now, what I plan on doing is taking some dowels and gluing up the edges of them so I can roll them up, which will help me in transporting it and keeping it, you know, all of that. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I finished this thing like late last night. Did not have the time to go get everything. I'm to the wire with this one, guys. It was supposed to be an easy project, but again, if you're gonna do something, might as well overdo it. Anyways, let me know what you thought of this project. If you are comfortable with these mediums or know like ancient cartography skills, please do tell. I'm very interested now. You have my ADHD attention. And if you liked what you saw here today, give me some of that like it love, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you know when we release new stuff. The button is free and it really helps the channel out. Okay, that's it for me. I have a war to plan for. In the meantime though, keep leveling up, you. You made it to the end screen. YouTube loves it when you do that. It's a fantastic way to support this channel. Another fantastic way to support this channel is by joining these people's noble ranks. These are our Patreon members, and we can't do this without them. Massive shout out to our Grandmaster tier Patreons, Ghetto Medic, WildFox99, Froggy, Dragon Designs, and Yuri Satro. It means the world to us that you support us in what we do here, and it's because of all of you that we're able to get all of the materials we need, travel to have these experiences, and just generally do all of the cool stuff we get to do. We super appreciate you. If you like what we do here and want to support us, consider joining our Patreon, link in the description below. Otherwise, you can check out one of these videos that YouTube thinks you'd like, and that helps out a lot too. All right, I gotta find little tokens that I can use on my map to plan battles, and a long stick to push them with. Very cool.